Ready? All right. I'll have to do that every now and then. Welcome to the February 19th meeting of the Wareham Finance Committee. Roll call, if you please, Mrs. Clerk.
Present are Joan Fonts, Marilyn Donahue, Larry McDonald, Tom Worthen, and Bonnie Catulli.
Anyone here for citizens participation? Okay. Let's go on to little business recruitment and future finance committee position openings. It's going to be on our agenda every week. We will be having most likely 3 positions open as of July 1st, and we would like to fill those with people that are interested in being part of the finance committee. It can be difficult at times, but the reality is you learn a great deal about municipal finance, and there's things that you will learn in this that you can take into your life, and you get to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. So if you're interested, you can go to the town website and put in an application for the finance committee, or simply drop an email to the finance committee or the town administrator. Is that the selectman's office? Selectman's office, and they will direct you from there. Town administrator's report. I guess I should turn on my microphone. What you got tonight?
Just not too much. We don't get an update really on the 2015 budget since last go around. The only item updated is that today we did receive free cash approval, so.
Take it away, Mr. Sullivan.
So free cash was certified at $874,361. And then the sewer enterprise fund, which is retained earnings, was certified at $2,702,417.
Does that number look a little low for the sewer enterprise fund?
I think last year I thought they'd done about 3.2 million.
That's correct. It
Yeah.
seems to be going down instead of up, which is not the right direction at this point.
So I think the use of retained earnings in the budget will probably cease for FY15.
Thank you. Just a little explanation before I turn it over to my committees. Obviously, the $874,000 is a big number, but could you kind of go into why that number's there? Because it's not like anybody's hiding anything or doing anything. I think it requires an explanation.
And one of the big things was when we had free cash certified the previous fiscal year, there was essentially a credit and a debit reversed, whereas we were hit for a snow and ice deficit twice. And that was approximately $450,000. So when it came out, when we went through everything this year, went through the balance sheets, and that was one of the main holdups, it turned out that what had been debited actually should have been credited in the reverse for that. So that's the reason we have approximately an extra, if you will, about 450,000 in there. The normal 420 is we do receive extra revenue from the EMS. We do not budget their revenue. We budget their expenses, and then the revenue exactly to the expenses, and whatever's left over flows to free cash. So.
Any questions? Any comments? One thing I'll say about that too is now that we're talking about an ambulance coming online, that actually you may see that number go up. Is that correct?
Yeah, we probably would see that go up as we have an ambulance online for the full time, but the build out's still happening. So we're not going. I wouldn't see an increase for FY14, but FY15. But we're also looking at having additional part-time staffers in FY15, so that we can manage 2 trucks, have them on the road, and gain the revenues from there. The projections all look like we'll still will make revenue off of that. In other words, have a surplus. It's going to be interesting to go through it because it's going to be, as the year flows on, seeing what realistically happens.
Okay. Yes, Mrs.
With
Donahue.
regard to EMS, have they looked into the change in the billing provider? I know that was an issue when he came before us.
Yeah,
Some of the concerns over the time delay on billing and the company that's doing it and the percentage they were charging. He was going to look into that.
Yeah, because I think one of the things where there's confusion is everybody thinks that there is a $800,000 every year. That's a cumulative of 10 years. It's not the billing company's issue. It's actually the town of Wareham's issue. We do not have a policy of writing that off. If you wrote that off every year, you would not have that balance. Now, one of the things is when you write that off for us on the municipal side and for those, it doesn't mean that that debt is gone. If somebody pays on it, they never do pay. We still get the receivables on there. We're just not having that outstanding liability. So
How does it show up on a balance sheet?
it wouldn't on our,
As a receivable of 800,000?
Yeah, it wouldn't on actually on our books. It really doesn't unless you would hand project it out or ask for the report from the billing company, which I think is Coastal.
What could we sell that for? Really?
Any update on the 2014 budget?
No, we still have the last numbers we had were December's, so we'll be working on January's. As we saw before, the police have been trending towards a deficit. So some of the actions we took, which we saw at the last meeting, was moving the school resource officer back into the rotation. We also removed a member of the Cape Cod Drug Task Force and brought them back into the rotation as part of it. We did shuffle around a few positions to make a temporary sergeant till we were waiting for the exams to come out, and those are what we're trying to do to keep that budget in line.
Are you going to make me ask?
Well, no, I'll let you go ahead.
I just want to know how we get to spend our $874,000.
Can you comment on that at this time?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay, that's
I would
fine.
Because you
say
did promise
by-
us some of it for stabilization.
Yeah, half of it by our policy goes to stabilization.
Okay.
Another part of it, we're looking for maybe approximately 100,000 going towards if we are able to have National Grid come in and replace our lights, put in more efficient lighting, which will save us money in the future. Their current reimbursement to municipalities is 70%. So if we looked at that and roughly the buildings would cost a school in town between anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, it could be $100,000 cost. I would recommend we take that out of the free cash, because that is a one-time and essentially a capital cost, and then that will save us money in our budgets going forward. We could budget that for 2 years. They do 0% interest loans on it, but why not just pay it off and make sure that we enjoy the savings on it. The rest of that, realistically, will
Snow
probably
and ice.
vote towards the snow and ice. Yeah.
Now, we had, I don't know if we're allowed to discuss the conversation we had with the Department of Revenue, but their recommendation is never to use it for operating expenses. You need to use that towards capital or extraordinary area items, or even, and they agreed that stabilization is a good place for it to go, which I concur.
About the only other thing I could see is if we needed, I think there's, for personal property for the reval for 2015, we still need about 14,500. And if I can't do an interdepartmental transfer to cover that, I might try and see if we can have that. And those are one-time costs for the triennial reval.
Any other questions? Yes.
And I have one on the sewer enterprise fund of the retained earnings. Is there a way in the system yet that we're breaking out the difference between prepaid betterments versus?
No, though
Errors.
you wouldn't break that out, because
Okay.
when somebody prepays, that's going into either, the regular account of the enterprise fund, which washes out to the free cash. As part of the management report from the DOR, we're looking into really how we stand for that. We've projected right now with the free cash that that we have now and looking into the future, that we would have enough to cover all our debts. But of course, I want confirmation from the Department of Revenue on that. We also are trying to put together a plan for capital needs, because I think everybody's forgetting that we need somewhere in the vicinity of $30 million worth of upgrades to the Swiss Beach area, onset, and the facility itself, and those need to be started yesterday. So any money we have available for capital in the enterprise fund, I would suggest we use it towards that.
We will bring them back in during the warrant review and go over that, because I think there were some questions. You had some line items saying that they said capital, but I think they really need to be saying reserved for capital, because there was some confusion last year as to how we approach this and the rules. So we'll get into that one when we invite them back. We'll have that conversation at that point. How about 2015? Any update?
Oh, we're still at the, I think it's approximately 232,000. I think I go between saying 234 and 232, depending on whether I'm happy or sad at the moment. So, but that's obviously, that's out of a $55 million budget. That's an achievable gap. So.
You want to talk a little bit about what we can get into that a little bit down at the bottom, but that's fine. Any questions on the 15 before we move on? We want to talk a little bit about printing the warrant. This is going to be a fairly large warrant. The report from the Finance Committee is going to be fairly lengthy because of what we're trying to accomplish, as well as we're going to have at least one appendix, which is going to be the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Kelly doesn't have a mic, but I'm going to turn mine over to hers. I'm not sure that in-house is the best way, but I'll let Kelly give us kind of a.
We do have that machine that you roll.
Here you go. Before she hits me, I'm giving her the mic.
Well, I just would like to know how we're going to proceed with that, because there's two warrants as well. There's going to be the special and the annual.
The special should be much smaller. That might be manageable
Maybe
in-house. Let's see. Can you grab some quotes, rough it out for what we're going to have for the annual? Because I think also, and obviously this is at the, if Madam Moderator's okay with it, I thought that it might be good to have some information in the front about town meeting itself, so that there's some explanations, which would, I think, maybe help us get things moving quicker as well. So.
The rules of town meeting,
Yeah.
so she didn't have to go over them. They would be in the front of the book.
Use the mic.
We're sharing the mic. Oh, sorry. I know that our budget only has, I think it's $3,000 in it in the Finance Committee, so that's mostly for printing.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if she gets some quotes, we'll kind of decide which way to go. I don't think it's a lot of work for one person, let alone two people. And you're probably not printing, what did we print last time? 200? 250. We're probably going to be printing 3.
I would kick it up this year, especially with the contingent Proposition 2.5
Right.
budget on there.
She's done talking to you about that. So. Anything on that?
You can always go for a reserve fund request if it's too much,
Yeah.
but they're tough, so watch out.
Let's go a little bit into Finance Committee matters. I don't think this is going to be a long meeting tonight, but we've got some things we have to do. I think you should all have a copy of the warrant as it is. It's a very small document at this point. Is this all there is in it?
Yeah, we removed a lot of them from the initial phase was carryovers that didn't need to be in here or could be put in with the revolving funds for the Board of Health and such. If you see, we actually combined a couple articles into one under recurring business. Should be a nice one-night meeting.
Wow, we're getting so streamlined, wow.
What's the FY15, Article 5, FY15 capital plan?
That's if we are going to fund a capital plan, that's a placeholder for it. So I would think when the order comes about, that one I would say goes after the contingent budget. Because if we don't have the funds in there, clearly besides the police cruisers within the police budget, I wouldn't see any items. So I would suggest we probably list those out. Obviously, as I've said, the only item in there now is police cruisers for a capital lease.
You want to just go through this article by article if anybody has any quick questions? Okay, let's just do that, and then we'll figure out who we have to invite when and where. Article 1 is the election of officers. That's standard spring town meeting article. Any questions on that one? Article 2 is recurring business. Well, this is new.
Yeah, these are usually separate and they're combined, so
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, those are the same things. They've just been combined together. The town. Anybody see anything on Article 2 that's out of the ordinary? Expend interest earned for loan repayments made between the town and Wareham. Okay.
So do we know if, was this done with the approval of the moderator and town council to combine everything in Article 2?
They are the ones that work.
I assume that, and we'd always talked about this is just basic town business, this authorized, that gives them the authority, so that makes sense.
Any more on Article 2?
Nope.
Article 3 is compensation of certain appointed officials. That's going to be
Realistically, the only one would be the town
Town
clerk.
clerk.
and
town
she's-
clerk and the town moderator, right?
Moderator, yes, you're right, and the town clerk also has the registrar, and I think does we have the moderator, and then is it the assistant moderator?
No, I don't
what's
think he gets
Joash's?
paid.
He doesn't get paid.
Oh,
He does it out of the kindness of his heart.
yeah. Well, we're lucky to have him.
Are we voting on a dollar figure, or
Yeah.
we'll vote on a dollar
There
figure?
will be
at
an
that point?
actual dollar figure in there. That one actually we should be able to put in now, so we can get that in as part of the motion.
Okay. Any other questions on 3?
Nope.
Article 4, revolving funds.
The only update to the previous years is the Board of Health article in there. At the very bottom. But there's one in here that's, you wanna? It's one of the reasons I understand us putting the grid in here. I usually put it as part of the motion, but again, it gets picked up under social recreation. It should be $1 instead of 50,000.
Social recreation should be $1?
Yeah.
Okay.
With some of the changes you're making to the budget, are any of these going to change?
No, right now they wouldn't change because basically these are just the spending limits, and if there's any monies left over, they would, you can see what happens to them. Unencumbered balance from FY14 funds transfers to FY15 revolving. So as those move through, unless that department's never going to ever come back, it would.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Donahue?
Derek, refresh my memory, what are our limitations for these combined? Under-
Combined, it's 1% of the levy limit.
Okay,
So that'd be 330,000, or excuse me, you're actually closer to it's 1% per department. So in other words, the council on aging couldn't have 330 or 340,000 altogether.
it is per department.
Yes, and then you have an overall one that I believe I thought was close to 10%. I'd have to look at that
I just
number.
want to double check that because I remember we were close at one point, there was a concern, so,
Yeah, if you look, the COA, you've got about 300,000, which is very close, but it's still within the range.
okay.
Questions? We already talked a little bit about Article 5, which is the capital plan, which is going to be contingent on our other votes, is what I understand correctly, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And then the Article 6, which is the budget, is that going to include both budgets?
No, actually, you'll have the FY15 budget, and then you have the supplement under Article 7.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair? We're going to have some conversation with the moderator because we have the lottery system in place for our town meeting, which there's a good reason for as far as special interest items. You don't want to pack the house and then have everyone leave. You want to make everyone hang out through the process. The bad part is when we have financial articles like this that are dependent on each other, it messes us up. So we're going to have to see what she and town council are comfortable with, making a motion if something comes up out of order with the little spinny ball system that we can put a hold on it or ask to take something out of order.
Yeah, we've linked articles in the past.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem, but I just
Right.
want to make sure that we're not stumbling on stage over that, because it's very clear in this budget that it's much more important that these items come in the correct order.
And obviously, it's at the moderator's discretion, so I'm not going to speak to her.
And she's hopefully having a nice relaxing vacation, so maybe she'll be in a good mood when she comes back.
Yeah,
According to the pictures, she is. So, just so you know. Article 7 is obviously the other budget that we'll put together. Really no-
May I have a question on Article 6?
Yes.
The capital spending, all we're doing is buying police cars, is that?
That's just in the budget itself.
The budget.
yes.
But where have we seen what, I know we saw the capital thing, which was $7 million, but how much is that budget going to be?
There's $100,000 under the police budget for capital.
And that's it?
Yes.
At this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once we hone in on the number that we'll have available, then we can look at different ways to maximize that number.
Right. One of the things with the vehicles, the way they are now, we can't put sort of the hope on a contingent budget, and we've made the decision to fund the 100,000 and essentially reduce the police budget a little bit from where we could maybe have some more personnel in there. But if they can't go out on the road with the vehicles, it doesn't matter how many people you have. So.
Yes.
I think what Tom was trying to get at, and maybe I'm wrong, but when we're talking about Article 5, are you going to give us your best pick of what your capital plan would be if you get the money?
Yeah,
We've seen the capital
Yeah.
plot, just,
we'll see really what we're working on for that. I'm honestly not sure where I'd go
Okay.
with it right now.
all right.
But you can take credit for the things that the harbor master's doing, and the things that
No.
CPA's doing, or whatever it is, the roof here and the.
There's no, I guess the taking credit for is the incorrect term. Those are capital items that need approval, which are separate items. So the CPA have their own warrant articles.
Uh-huh.
So they wouldn't be part of the capital, because the capital is what we're going to raise and appropriate or borrow from. So these are our funding mechanisms, sort of the town as a whole.
But when it's explained, we ought to say that's not the total of the total capital that's represented in this warrant.
I understand
that we're
what you're
proposing.
saying. I also think on town meeting floor, maybe we put as part of the explanation from the finance committee. I wouldn't try and do that on the floor. I think it would confuse the situation.
Even though it's included in that number you saw the other day, the 7 million, those are taken care of by funds outside of the general government funds. And if we get into, we don't ever want to give the impression that CPC can take care of everything.
No, I
because they can't, so.
understand that, but to sit back and say you're going to spend only $100,000 in capital in a $70 million budget doesn't make any sense.
It's
true.
true, though, at this point.
Within the budget, within our revenues,
Okay.
and within our
All right.
FY15 budget. So from raise and appropriate,
But
transfer
the
from
town
general-
is able to do its maintenance and capital, some of it through other channels.
No,
Never mind,
yeah.
forget it. I just wanted to.
I understand where you're going with it, and you're right. Because CPC has relaxed some of their rules, we're able to use that, which is actually a benefit to us.
Oh,
Because if not for that, then we would be really sucking wind at this point. But more important is what's left on that capital list and how we go about funding it, how we prioritize the priorities. Because we are going to be faced with some that have to come up fairly quick. And same thing with the water pollution control facility. Their capital too, while it doesn't actually show up as a capital item on here, it's in the water pollution control facility. It's not coming out of the general government funds. So, all right. So we did Article 7, Article
Sorry.
8. That's okay. No, I understand. It's a good question.
Excuse me.
Yes.
With regard to Article 7, does everyone on our committee know that the town administrator and the superintendent spoke in front of the Board of Selectmen last night to put that out as a placeholder? And the 4 members that were present were very positive about that.
I think they had, well, we can get into that, the discussion of the joint, the C&D, but yeah, they were positive.
Hey,
That's okay, I was too. Hi.
we saved you a seat. We
Can
saved
you
you
get
a
through?
seat.
Article 8 is Upper Cape Regional, Upper Cape Cod. We still haven't got a number from them. I know they're doing the interviews on March 1st, so we should be sometime in March, we should have a number from them.
Yeah, that's what they've anticipated. And again, my understanding is that Bourne has had a huge increase in its students, and
Yeah.
that's, last year we sort of experienced it, so it's their lucky go bout.
And this is, don't quote me on this, but I believe last year they had 160 eighth graders, and when they got to high school, only 80 of them went to Bourne. The other 80 went in different directions, and that caused a great bit of concern for Bourne. So, they lost.
Was it Bourne that's looking for 85 more spots? It was in the paper?
I'm sorry?
Is Bourne looking for 85, or is it Falmouth who's looking for?
Within-
Bourne is looking for 85 more.
Within Upper Cape Cod Tech?
Not that I know of.
An increase.
Oh, their increase? Yeah, their
Yeah.
increase went up, but I don't know that it went up that much. I'll have better figures. We're going to have to schedule them on the agenda to get them in here to talk to us once they get their number together.
Yeah, I think we could have our local reps come in after they've had their meeting just to speak about it maybe, and then have Superintendent Dutch come in to do his presentation.
Okay. Article 8 is the Water Pollution Control Enterprise Fund. This one, we're going to supplement this article with an appendix that actually shows their expenses as well as their revenues in the appendix. So, but we never see that at town meeting, and I think it's critical that people see what they're voting on and can ask questions on that. I know Bonnie would be real excited by that as well.
Oh, excited, yes.
Any questions on that? 10 is appropriation to EMS, which is, again, that's general housekeeping business, I guess you'd call it, in a sense that that's where they're appropriating to the EMS. 11 is rescind previous town article for purchase of school buses. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that one real fast so we don't make a mistake of...
Yeah, there was a request for, I thought it was 3 school buses. I'm probably butchering the numbers. But as part of setting the tax rate, at the time town meeting had passed this article, the revolving fund to purchase it would have put it into deficit. So the DOR disallowed this as an article, and we're rescinding it. I know when the vote was taken, it was anticipated by the end of the fiscal year those monies would come in, which would bring the account back into whole. However, that didn't happen by the close of the fiscal year. So the Department of Revenue said when we took this vote, the account was in deficit and it was an illegal vote.
Questions? Article 12 is going to be interesting. Article 12 is the return Everett Education Center to the town, to town control. I assume this means that the building, Everett School, is going to be returned to the town for, they're not using it any longer?
Yes, that's, I believe they left it, I don't know the approximate time frame, but it sounds like they're looking to turn it back into the custody of the town.
What kind of shape is it in?
Not very good. I believe there's some water leaking issues which have developed into mold, which is one of the reasons staff had been taken out of there.
Yeah, any questions? Go ahead, I know you've got one.
No, I was just going to suggest that since we have both the town administrator and a member of the school committee here, are they prepared to discuss it? We could just get through this item right now and not have to come back to it. You want to do that?
I'm okay if they're okay.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Jeff, if you don't want to, but,
I don't feel on the spot, but I don't think it's appropriate.
okay.
We can wait. It needs to be done at a later date anyway.
That's a question.
Yes.
Thank you. So if it comes back to the town, is that gonna be an added expense for the town, or is that something that we can, fix and rent, sell, or, I mean, is that gonna be a burden, a big burden on the town?
I imagine there would be some costs associated with it. If we're still going to heat the building, keep it slightly open. One of the things that you never really want to do to a building is completely shut it down, winterize it. Then you start having the boards in it contract and expand with the heat and the cold. I know the house I purchased was a foreclosure, and I have the creakiest floors you've ever heard. They had the heat off for an entire winter. So,
One other question, does anyone have any future outlook for the building, or not at this time?
I mean, there's always ideas. So you could turn it into a nonprofit center and start to rehab it. You could sell it. You could turn it into housing. You could do a million different things with it. But it's all the cost and what's the best outlook for the town. I mean, I couldn't see. It's a historical building. I believe it's one of the first schoolhouses. What do they call it? The Little Red.
Little Red Schoolhouse.
Yeah, Little Red Schoolhouse. It's a really neat looking building. I haven't been inside, I have to admit, but it's kind of neat from the outside. It's a nice location too.
You say it was historical?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
CPC. Here we go. But I thought it was interesting that down here we can, including for general purposes, including sale or disposition or take any action. So, we have options with it as well. Yes, Mr. Warden.
Can we get them to add East, West, Hammond School to that list?
I think you can request it. I don't know if we want them, but you can request it.
Well, my sense is that we ought to look at all of our assets and see what we need and have a disposition plan for that which we don't need, because everything we have costs us money.
It's not going to happen at this town meeting because the warrant's closed. But I agree with you that that's something that, and we'll get into that. I think we have that discussion kind of covered a little bit in the next sequence. I'm not positive, but I think if we haven't, then we'll make sure I revisit it.
Okay.
Any more questions on the Everett Education Center? High school roof project. This is the one where they did the engineering study, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and this is actually to borrow, transfer, or get the funds to actually do the roof. Is that correct?
Yeah, we need to approve it and fund it, and that's why I think we need to sit down, see whether to simplify it for myself, whether we're going to essentially do it as a construction loan or borrow for the whole item and pay it out as we get reimbursements. Mine would be essentially like it's a construction loan that the MSBA reimburses us on each different phase, 68%, I believe. Yeah, so that they reimburse us during each phase, and at the end you have a X amount of costs, and that's what you would borrow for. My understanding is bond counsel has recommended 10 years for the borrowing because the appetite in the market's not to go beyond that right now.
What's the life expectancy of the roof after it's done?
I don't know, but usually they've been about 20 years at least.
Okay. Any more questions on that one? Yes, Mrs. Cattouli.
I'm just reading through it, and it says, because I'm just playing devil's advocate here, it says, which the town may be eligible for a school construction grant from Massachusetts School Building Authority. How good is the may be?
I,
That's my question, but.
yeah. Probably I'm not the best one to answer on that. I would tell you from everything I understand that's a very solid good maybe, but
Okay, I won't be
Yeah.
the last person who asks that, so just,
Actually, Mrs.
Good
Donahue,
question.
go ahead.
I just think you have a wrong word in there, Derek. The second sentence, will include the removal of existing roof system, removal of wet or damaged. Shouldn't that be insulation, not installation?
damage means prior installation, something that's been
Okay.
installed there before.
Okay.
I read it the same exact way.
Yeah, I'm
I
thinking
did
that
the
just
same
didn't sound
thing.
right. Okay.
I believe MSBA had a hand in writing this article as well. This is written to the where it's acceptable to them as well. So some of these words may be,
Okay.
and we went over this last time when we did it when they were going to try to do it for the study, because my biggest concern was that word maybe. I don't like the word maybe when we're dealing with money, but that's what it is.
I have got to compliment the timing, how this was done. We said we were going to do it in the fall. We got the thing done, and here we are on schedule.
yeah, the school did a great job with it. I know
Good.
there was initial push from Principal Palladino. He did a great job with it. And then the superintendent and business manager, Superintendent Kimberly Shaver-Hood and the business manager, Michael McMillan, really moved forward and got it done. So they did a great job on it.
Article 14 is the cemetery sale. This is for municipal maintenance, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a tough one how to explain it for that. The cemetery commissioners want control of the funds, so I don't know you would necessarily say it's municipal maintenance. My understanding is that they are afraid it will go into a giant vacuum and we'll spend it on rainbows and unicorns or something. So.
Unicorns are nice. Mr. Camerano?
So you're saying that none of the funds from that can go into the general fund? Is that what you're
Correct.
trying to say?
No.
Correct. They
Cannot.
go into a separate line. They would not be in the general fund.
This is governed by Mass General Law, so
Yeah.
and again, there's a procedure in Mass General Law that tells you how it can be done and what funds you can draw up to a certain dollar figure. But my concern now is that now that we're talking about this is that when you say they want control of the money, are they going to, so the workers that work for the town are going to be under the direction of the cemetery commissioner, is that correct?
My understanding is that this will not go towards any of the employees of the town. This would be to, they have all sorts of projects with this, including hiring seasonal laborers that would not be under the direction necessarily of municipal maintenance. It'd be some of the kids, I believe, from Upper Cape Cod
Yes.
Tech. The spirit's probably, like many things, the spirit's probably just on it. It's going to be a bit of a headache as to how we go through it because, now is our cemetery superintendent going to be the one looking over and watching all these, what sort of costs are going to be expended. It's, but to be blunt, the municipal maintenance, the interim municipal maintenance director and cemetery commissioners have been working very well on this. So I think it's light years from when we first started about 7 months ago. So I applaud the effort on it.
Mrs. Donahue?
And do we know what the current balance in that account is?
We would have to get it from, I thought it was about 370,000.
I'd like to know that. just when we
We'll
come back
have
to
them
it.
in.
That will
and
be a
I think that's
question.
one of the questions we'll have when we have them in, Is this gonna have to, yes, Mr.
I have one
Cameron.
more.
You only get two.
Okay, we're selling town land, town grave spots, but the town doesn't get to use the money only for the cemeteries. Just seems to be a little.
Mass general law.
Hold on, I understand. You know, but has anyone actually read the Mass General Law to see what it actually?
Yes,
like
I
to
have.
read- Okay, so it says that, I mean, is it like, an enterprise fund, or is it?
There are specific rules for selling cemetery plots and maintaining cemetery plots and how the money is used. It's not, I'll bring it in so you can read through it. It's very complicated, because when we went back to town meeting, I believe it was 2 town meetings ago, I had spent a great deal of time reading to it, how they could use the money. And one of my biggest concerns at that point was that in order for an article to come forth from the cemetery commissioners, it had to come through the selectmen first, because they're an advisory committee, if you will, to the selectmen. So for them to put an article on and the selectmen not to see it, that was a big concern of mine. They did talk to the selectmen before this article was put on the warrant this time, so they followed the procedures on that. But I can guarantee you that it has to follow the rules.
Okay, now, may I throw out my other 10 cents?
Go ahead.
The town is paying to plow these roads in the cemetery. They're paying to do a lot of other things, and yet we're not allowed any money from it. It's, am I right or wrong? I mean,
you're right
the town
on.
does spend money
Yeah,
that
there's
isn't paid by the cemetery commission.
there's sales. The sales of lots and graves goes to this would be essentially a receipts reserved for appropriation account. We do collect fees for the actual burial. We pay we charge certain fees, and it's to help cover the costs of that. Yeah, for the then there's initial, there's perpetual care. There's this thing is it is a bear.
So you feel that it does not, the town is making enough where it is not a burden on the town to get any other funds from it?
I think
I mean, we're broke. You gotta try to find money any way you can.
the long and the short is I think someone could correct me if I'm wrong. They were saying the last time these funds were accessed were close to 2 decades ago. So I mean, part of this will help in that let's say the Upper Cape Cod Tech kids would be doing work that maybe some of our municipal maintenance employees would have to do as well. So it's going to be able to put them onto other projects and such, be able to take care of them in a manner maybe we haven't. You can imagine that while mowing the cemeteries is tough, the hardest and longest part is probably the weed whacking of it. So and we've taken on a certain duty by having town cemeteries. So.
We're just looking for money, that's all.
We will, this is going to be when the cemetery commissioners come and sit and talk to us about it.
Okay.
But I'm already putting your name, penciling your name right in next to the,
Thank you.
right next to the advice there, Mr. Cameron.
And I appreciate it, Don. We're looking in the coin for the payphones, for any little change you can find.
Go by every
School and the town can both use it,
Yeah.
so, I don't think these people in the ground are gonna mind where you spend the money, but,
Do we have a limit as to how long they get the plot? I mean, in England, it's 100 years, and then they can.
The funniest
They
thing.
remove you?
Yeah. No, they can remarket it. Yeah, you run out of land. I mean, it's.
We had to pay for my grandmother in Berlin. This was when the Cold War was still going on. You had to pay a certain amount of years on. It was 25 years, and then you'd have to renew it. And if you didn't, they would be dug up, cremated, and the ashes would be given to the family. 'Cause especially at that time, there was only a certain amount of land. So
We can have this discussion on.
With the cemetery people
Yeah,
in
with the
here.
cemetery commission. I think we've gone over the CPC articles. We've had them here. Is that correct? All right, so we can skip over the CPC article and go to Article 18, which is to charter changes, which, again, we'll have Mr. Slavin come in and explain them to us and how they're going to affect us. All I told him when I spoke with him was that we do not want to end up with 5 days between the time we get the warrant and when we have to close and when we have to have everything ready. So we'll have that discussion with Mr. Slavin. Amendments to bylaws. Article 19. Who should we have in for this one?
The town clerk inserted it.
This was,
Are you going to speak on her behalf, or is she going?
Yeah,
to
no, this, I can give a little background on it right now. We've had people coming in with their animals and such, some of them putting them on the counters while working. That's some of the smaller dogs. Some of the, I've grown up with dogs, and I'm a dog lover, as many people are, as I know the town clerk has dogs as well, but people have brought in what can be considered aggressive breeds, such as pit bulls and such, and it can get a little chaotic. Sometimes people forget that what they consider a family member, others may not necessarily.
My only comment is isn't that we issue dog licenses in town, correct?
We do.
In that building.
In
Okay.
that office.
All right. Enough said about that
But
one.
you don't gotta bring the dog in. I just wanna know, does this exclude, show and tell pets at the middle school or something?
Yeah, I don't know if it does. The service dogs are the ones, obviously, that have the caveat.
I like dogs and cats too, they eat 'em.
All right, we can further that discussion another time. Article 20 is a street layout. Is this the one we passed over last time? No, it's,
Yeah, we have two of them. I can't tell whether it was Cranberry Lane. I thought it was.
this is Lynn Road, and
Yeah, I think these are two different ones, actually, because I thought it was off of Brown Street was the one last time.
is that me? We'll have to get the proponent. Doesn't say who it was.
I know Lynn Road wasn't last time. I know
Yeah.
that for a fact. I don't know about the other ones.
For these private roads, they want to get accepted as town roads, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right.
The Board of Selectmen can address that.
Yeah,
Can they come in?
we'll invite the Board of Selectmen in to address that one.
Anybody know where Merchant Way is?
Yeah, it's right behind the.
Bashant.
Bouchon? That's right.
listen.
Gotta learn your French. That's Bashant.
Bouchon.
I think it's a side street off of Lynn Road, I believe.
Oh, that's right. I know where Lynn Road's off Swiss Beach Road.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
I
there's
know
a
that.
side
So this is
street.
that small, there is a small street off of that, so that's
Yeah.
where they are.
I
That's a
think
new
that's-
development. Yeah, okay.
That's, yeah. And the other one is a street layout on Article 21 for Cranberry Lane, which we passed over last time because they had not met certain deadlines, correct?
Correct.
All right, we'll revisit that one. Oh,
The
boy.
next article's Cranberry Lane.
Article 22, transfer development rights. That's, yes, Mrs. Donahue. I'll just sit back, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they're having a public hearing on that, or an informational hearing on that on Thursday night, which I will not be able to attend
This Thursday?
this Thursday.
Oh, sorry, can't go either.
So,
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process on this. It's basically managing how we want the town to develop. Some of the theories behind it are if you have, out here, if you have a lot of room to develop, well, it costs you how much to get all the services out there. So if you can keep that as sort of, let's call it pristine land, for lack of a better term, and create more development opportunities where we already have development, it helps the town to expand and keep the services in a cheaper manner as well. But there's a lot more to it than that.
as a concept, it's a wonderful idea, and I think we heard that the first time it came before us, but the devil is in the details, and the details were not properly done before the Springtown meeting, so I would like to see if someone can attend.
I'll go
to
if you
watch.
want me to go, and not that I'll know anything, but I was
I
at
may
the
be
first
able to
one they
make the
did
end of
before
it,
the
yeah.
other meeting. I'll go.
I would like to go, because I think it would be a definite benefit to the town to be able to do it, but if we don't do it right, it's scary. So,
I'll ask if they're, I don't know if this one's being videotaped or not. If it is, or if it's being taped.
Well, if Tom's got time.
Yeah, no, I'll go. My one thing on this is that it would seem to me that we should have a professional land developer, planner oversee this thing and sort of sign off on the plan rather than, I mean, citizens are fine, but
Oh, planning
They're-
board.
Yeah, we've had the planning board, Attorney John.
But those are,
Whit-
these are all volunteer people, that we don't
Yeah.
have a,
Attorney John Witten on it, who is a land use attorney. I
I'm
know
talking
that-
about like Olmsted or somebody like that who did Central Park, or, you know, a
I don't think he's around anymore, Tom.
No, no, but I mean a professional who is into the overall master planning for suburban, urban areas. Not a lawyer, not citizens who think.
We're gonna get emails from lawyers now, thanks, Tom.
Well, if we had the position of town planner, then you would have someone
Yeah, that's
overseeing
right.
it.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
And I
think
guess
Tom's
that's the
saying.
concern, are we,
You won't have a town planner before this is
oh, no,
all
I
done,
realize that. We
so,
don't get a town planner until sometime next year, maybe.
Yep.
It took me a while to grasp the concept, because I always look for okay, where's the kicker in this? And the kicker is you can take, and you're right, you're taking a piece of property that's out there that's not developed, and you're taking and selling the rights to someone who can develop in a more dense area where you already have development. And as long as it's controlled, is that the word we're looking for? As long as it's overseen and controlled, it makes sense. But when you don't, you stand a chance of overdeveloping a dense area. And all right, yes.
I was just yawning.
Oh, I bore you that bad? Okay, no
Don't
answer.
go there, Larry.
It's tax day. I'm tired.
Onward to, we'll have somebody in from, I guess, the planning board.
Get George in.
That'd be the ones I'd have in, wouldn't you think? Is it the planning board, or is it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
put in by the
I would
planning
think
board.
so.
All right. We have a petitioned article to see if the town will vote to amend Division 8, V111,
That's 8.
by adding Article 9, or Article 4, registration and maintenance of abandoned or foreclosed buildings, structures, and properties. In general, the bylaw imposes maintenance obligations on owners of foreclosed properties, and it requires such owners to register with the town and pay an initial and annual registration fee of $100. That's one we're going to have him in to discuss.
Well, I mean, I can see the problem with it, an annual registration fee of owners. So are you gonna get every bank in the world to, have a registration fee? Because every bank is gonna foreclose property, do you want to register?
Well, for
You
every
see-
property they're gonna foreclose on.
Yeah, but how do they know what they're gonna foreclose? You can't foreclose if you're not registered?
Okay, we'll have that
Okay,
discussion with
all right.
Mr.
In other words,
Mr.
when they
Mulcairn.
choose to foreclose, they gotta come and tell the town of Wareham that they wanna do so, and
They gotta-
pay an
then
annual
an
fee of
annual fee?
$100
I guess.
Until that house is
until the
sold out.
house is maintained, so the house is maintained, and okay.
Just wrote Dom next to that article as well, just so you know.
I read it
You're
before
right,
that, I
Tom.
was just being nice.
We,
Article 24, petition, oh, do you want to say something?
No, it's just sort of something off non
Are
sequitur.
you singing to yourself like I feel pretty or something like that?
No, I was gonna say one of the interesting things is we still have we foreclosed on a property for back taxes. The first mortgagee didn't want to cover the lien for the second mortgagee. The second mortgagee didn't want to cover the lien for the first, and we have a wonderful property for auction that's in.
They both
almost-
gave it up?
Yep.
Wow.
But you know, according to this, you're going to have to pay an initial fee of
Might be
$100,
worth it.
Yeah.
and also an annual fee of $100 the town has.
Yep.
So, okay, anyway, let's, Article 24 is a petition article to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws. Why am I reading these? I have a clerk, don't I?
Too late now, Larry.
Okay, I'll finish this one.
You're at 24.
To see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws for accessory buildings and residential areas. Now, this is the one that came up before, again.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I think this is a little different. I think there was sort of the what they were calling was the A-bomb on it. It was to change all the zoning back to what 2002. Yeah, and now he's really getting more to the gist of what he wanted, which was essentially, I think he wasn't able to put a shed in. So this is a little bit of a softer hand approach.
Okay, well, we'll invite Mr. Fenton. What?
So this,
What?
So then this article's really a personal intention for this guy.
Yeah, I mean, even the, when you look at the people that have the private ways that want their accepted, that's, you know, private
Same type of
intention.
thing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think as a committee, we have to look at the overall impact of the article, not his own personal
That's the
reasons.
that's the whole article as written?
It's a little, it's, you know, I don't know how it would hold up with the AG's office, so that'd be interesting.
Well,
I'm just curious,
He's not telling us how he wants to amend it, he's
Exactly.
just saying to amend it.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, is that I was, when I read that, I go, is that the whole thing? I thought there was maybe an insert I hadn't been given or something?
No, at least it's down to that narrow category as opposed to repeal
Okay.
all the,
All the zoning
all
bylaws.
those
I
zoning
mean, accessory
bylaws.
buildings can be anything. Accessory buildings can be sheds, it can be a carport, it can be, you know,
And also, he just says to
Little-
amend, how does he
Yeah.
want to amend it? He wants to write anything he wants, no problem.
And we'll ask him those questions when he comes.
thank you so much.
Yeah, and I
And-
remember, I'm sorry to interrupt, I remember one petitioner was frustrated at a meeting and said, it said, I think it was one of the other ones as well, it said, well, administration didn't help me on this. Well, we do not help petitioned articles. It's not, you know, we're not going to put our assets towards something like that. So I just first want to let everybody know that, so.
But you treat him with respect.
Yes.
So
They're on here.
a couple things have to happen. Are you, any more questions on that one?
No,
No.
I'm sure we'll have a lot of
Couple things have to happen with this. This is, by the way, thank you very much. I was expecting a lot more articles and a lot more headaches, and we already have enough. A couple things have to happen. We will probably schedule a meeting to write motions with the town council, the town moderator, and the town what are you, town
I
administrator?
am pretty super.
Super duper town administrator. So we'll do that. And the other thing is, we'll also begin writing advice as we get through the articles. Mrs. Donahue, why don't you tell them your idea for writing advice?
I forget. No, actually, one of the things I'd like to see done that we haven't always done in the past is write advice and share it with each other prior to publishing it, because in my first term on the Finance Committee, people would be writing advice on certain articles, and it would just go straight to Kelly. And I don't want to put my words in someone else's mouth if there's a point that I've really missed. I think last spring, we did a better job of it. So yes, I'd like to do it as a workshop. So we can write the articles, the opinions on our own, but then vet it together or do it together, just as
I think
Larry
we-
said he'd bring in his
We did,
laptop.
yeah, I can do that. I think we did that one year, and this was prior to, I think it was prior to you, actually.
Could be.
And we got into trouble, okay?
Because everyone was
Because-
fighting about how it.
No, because that was prior to the town giving us our own emails where they could watch what we were doing. And so people would write recommendations and opinions, and then it was like, well, what do you think? And it went around the email circuit, and that violated open
Okay,
meeting law.
well, that's why I'm saying we can do
So
it
we
at a
start-
workshop, so it
Workshop.
can be open meeting, but I'd still like to have,
And the reason for the workshop is twofold. One is, this year, not just we're having to write advice, and advice is normal. We can pass that out, and I think everybody can work. But if we do it here, I'll bring a laptop if you want, and we'll write it. We'll get it all done that day. Everybody signs off on it. We're done with the advice. We also, this year, I'm going to try to write the bulk of our the letter from the Finance Committee. And I know it says from the Finance Committee chair, but it's coming from the Finance Committee, in my opinion. We need to write that as well that day. We'll fill in some of the blanks on the way there, but that's got to be done at the workshop too. We really have a lot more to do than we normally do because we want to do it right. We have a lot going on. So we may schedule a workshop towards probably the end of March or close to the end of March, before the election. Because we may have to change everything after. No, just so if everybody's up, we'll try to do it on a Saturday. You know, everybody up at what, 7 o'clock works for you, everybody? And
Yeah, right.
okay, I lied. Maybe about 8 or 9. But as a group, we'll write the letter. We'll write the advice. We'll get it all back to Kelly and make it easier on her this year. She don't have to chase us. She doesn't like to chase us, just so you know. Any other questions? The joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on other articles. The Board of Selectmen most likely will ask us to become part of a joint meeting to review the articles with proponents. That way they don't have to appear before both committees. And in some cases, I'm in agreement with that because some of these articles are simple. In other cases, I'm not. The reason for that is that we ask entirely different questions than they ask. And it's for us to have it at our meeting and be able to vote on it is a lot more comfortable than the sitting there with the selectmen and sorting through their questions as well. I think we have a different approach in a lot of cases. Some of these are simple. I have no problem doing that. But for the most part, we'll either invite the proponent to our meeting or we'll listen to what they have to say and probably invite them back to our meeting, which is, I guess, redundant. So maybe we won't even have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. I just feel like our job is much different than their job. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
I believe when we have joint meetings, we lose a lot of control, Larry.
I don't know that it's a question of control. We don't ask the
Maybe
same
control is the
question.
wrong word.
They're windier than we are.
Thank you very much. I think it is true. They're asking from a different. I don't believe they ask the same questions we do, and therefore it's a little confusing for me, for us to sit through the questions. Plus, when we have their meetings, we don't vote at that time. We typically
They're running for election, too.
right. So, well, okay. But my point is, with this, there's not many articles. Most of the budget ones we'll get from Mr. Sullivan, the super duper town administrator. So for the most part, we can, in one night, with the exception of a few of them, cap them off. We've already heard the CPCs. We'll probably end up having a little bit of a discussion. If we have any further questions, we'll ask them. And that's that. So the focus is going to be on writing advice. It's going to be on writing the letter. It's going to be on putting together the booklet. We'll probably have the town administrator at our next town administrator, the town moderator, our next meeting, discuss the fact that we want to put the rules of town meeting in the front of our book, which I think is a good idea. I think Mr. Sullivan came up with that again.
Yeah.
But that is good because you don't have to spend the time to do that. Okay, so the joint meeting may or may not happen. Anybody here strongly opposed to the idea of having them at our meeting as opposed to a joint meeting?
Not opposed at all.
Okay, nobody strongly opposed. That's good enough. All right, the discussion of the FY 215 progress. For those of you, I believe we discussed last week, we had a meeting with the superintendent and the town administrator based on the framework we talked about in here. And I would prefer, there's certain things we can't talk about at this point because they need to go before the Board of Selectmen and the school committee before they become fact. But if Mrs. Donahue wants to address, she's much better at addressing this than I am. Aren't you?
You already said most of it. I think it was something that this committee recognized early on, that a $2.5 million deficit makes a very difficult situation for the town, which is when we started talking about the revenue adjustment, also known as an override. I think the town administrator and the school superintendent are on board, working together to see what they can do. And we have some buzzwords that are out there. But I think it's really true that we need to restructure. We need to work with more efficiency. We've all seen that. We know that. So they're putting together a proposal that involves cuts, changes, and what makes it work going forward. Because Derek had already presented us the numbers that for example, a $3.5 million override doesn't solve the problem if we don't do anything else. So we saw those projected numbers. So we've got to go back. If we're going to ask for an override, we have to be able to promise people that it's better, and we're not going to come back to you in 2 or 3 years with our hands out again. So that's still in process, but the Board of Selectmen did approve it as a warrant article, which I don't believe is binding. What it means is we'll have discussion at town meeting. And I hope that our moderator will limit that discussion at town meeting, because really all it is we're going to ask the Board of Selectmen to bring it forth in the town, which the Board of Selectmen could actually do within their rights without it ever going through town meeting. Really what it will be is the town will vote on it. So this is almost This is the town meeting putting pressure on the Board of Selectmen to do it, to go forward with an override proposal.
All this article does is send the message to the Board of Selectmen to discuss this and to vote on whether or not to put it on the ballot. That's all it does. That's what this article does. But it's going to be based on the information that's contained in our report and the information that's contained in there. And then it's up to the Board of Selectmen to vote. And if they put it on the ballot, then it's up to the people to vote.
So the Board of Selectmen could still refuse to put it on a ballot. That's a possibility.
Yes.
And when it gets put on the ballot, it doesn't have any specific, this is how this money is going to
Oh, no,
spend, and this is,
no. That'll be done long before
Okay.
that. This is just procedural. Right.
Okay.
And one thing I will tell you is there was a great deal of progress, and then Mr. Sullivan's more than welcome to weigh in. There was a great deal of progress made in those discussions as far as recognizing the problem, and what we said earlier is it's not just a question of throwing money at it. It's a question of restructuring, repairing, and acknowledging where we can combine services, where we can eliminate things. It's a more comprehensive plan than just here's $3.5 million and you're going to fix everything. That's not the way it works, and we know that. We've seen the numbers. What happens when you do that? So, Ms. Donahue, I'm sorry, didn't
No,
mean to.
that's fine. So,
She's much better at explaining this than I am.
not until we have the actual plan. I mean, that is the codicil that we've all put on it. I'm not going to get behind a blanket check. I would love to spend $3.5 million. I could spend twice that much money. I'm sure Derek could too. But there's got to be a viable plan with 5-year projection of where we're going to be and why we're going to be better in 5 years before we can even attempt to sell it. So this committee will be, we will all have plenty of chance to look at that when there's real concrete numbers. So it's still very much up in the air. It's still very much a work in progress.
We're still working on it. I believe we're going to meet again. I think that, yes, would you like to say something, address us?
It's up to you to allow me.
Yes.
Up to the board.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right, please
Sure.
do. Come on up to the mic.
It was my understanding that the concept of a contingent budget is based on the concept that only town meeting can appropriate money. So if we have an override vote that is successful and town meeting has not acted to say this, if this money does come to pass, does exist, is approved by the town meeting voters, and if we don't say in town meeting how it will be spent, it literally just sits there because it has not been appropriate. So the function of town meeting is, in fact, in this case, to pass a contingent budget. That is a Mass General Law concept. So it's not just an article that encourages the Board of Selectmen to vote to put an override on the ballot. The primary thing it does, and the most difficult thing, of course, is to decide what it's going to be spent on. And that is, in fact, the role of the town administrator, finance committee to recommend, and for town meeting to approve. And then it becomes a contingent budget, and that's when the Board of Selectmen either says, yes, I want to put it on the ballot, and if they do, then the voters decide, and if the voters say yes, now you actually have a budget that includes the authorization to spend the new money. That's my understanding of the value of this article.
It makes sense.
Does that make sense?
You are correct.
I think you are correct. We were looking at this from the standpoint that the override piece of that has to be put on the ballot.
Yes. But the key point is the article is not just a recommendation. The article is literally an appropriation to spend the money,
All right, you're right.
okay, based if the money exists.
There you go. That's the key. If it exists.
And
I think it's the ballot question is going to be almost exactly how we spell out the expenditures. It's supposed to be the same way.
Yeah.
I would suspect it exactly would be.
Yeah. So.
Yes. But the key is town meeting appropriates.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
right. My bad.
It's true.
So that will be, again, we'll have more information as we get closer. I think sometime in March. We're looking for the middle of March to have something. I don't know that we're going to have concrete at that time. I don't know, Derek, but we're probably gonna have a good feel for what we're looking at.
Yeah, just stay away from March 17th.
Yeah, I know. I'm only half Irish, but I know what day that is. The Ides of March, or that's even worse. Any other discussion on the 2015 budget? Either one of them? Any other business, unanticipated items? Well, I guess you could call this that. Can I talk about the fact we had a conversation with the Department of Revenue today?
Yeah, I think that's.
So one of the questions I had, and I expressed this board, was, at what point does the state step in? I need to understand the process for a state to step in. And well, it's not just receivership. This is where I'm going.
Okay.
It's not just receivership, but when they step in, what do they do? And the one thing I got out of this conversation is there's actually 4 levels of how they step in. One is an overseer. The other is actually a board that the one is control board.
Third is receivership.
Receivership, and the other one's bankruptcy, which at this point in time, because we are not looking at a $2.5 million deficit, they're not looking at us as a candidate. However, you know, a lot of it depends on how we go forward with the budget and not. But one of the first things they said that the first step in getting a bullseye on your head is not when they can't set your tax rate. That is the first thing. For whatever reason, if it's, it could be they don't trust your accounting, whatever the reason, if they can't set your tax rate or refuse to set your tax rate, that's the first sign. So
Yeah, I think the big kicker was example was an unbalanced budget, a budget that
Right.
wasn't able to balance.
So as long as we balance our budget, that's fine. But I tried to bring up the fact that if you look at, even if we go out to the polls, and I'm not going to be negative, but if enough people show up and say we don't need an override, you know, we're going to face this question every year. And every year we're going to go further and further into that black hole. And eventually I think we're going to get to the point where we can't balance our budget any further. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, and I think that's clearly, it's not something that we're asking for or looking for. And sort of the message I received through it was none of these options the communities were very happy with. And that's the communities as a whole. You're giving up control of your entire community. And it's at all levels.
I believe you used the word hate.
Yeah.
They hated it because you lose control. They have authority and they can do what they want. And again, it all causes special legislation. And one of the things that, you know, it depends on the town and what your situation is and what problems. But, you know, that's basically what the DOR said is they're not looking to step in now. They've set our tax rate. We're 233 or 4 or whatever it is when you're feeling happy, $232,000 off the budget. So that's manageable. They're okay. But if it comes to the point where we can't set our tax rate, we're no longer able to cut to some level, and we have an unbalanced budget, which is probably about 3 years off if we don't do something, right? It's about.
Yeah, we talked. There's a structural deficit that's built into
Right.
to every single year, unless we take some actions besides an override. You know, we're going towards some issues. I mean,
Can I ask you just an offhand question?
Mr. Attorney, of course.
I look at it and I say, the things that we can't hold to a 2.5% annual increase are medical costs and pension costs.
Yeah.
And so we've got to address those.
yeah, and I think that I would just ask you look up Chapter 150E, the collective bargaining, because it's so easy to say address it. But it's so easy
I know,
to say address
I
it.
understand that, but at some point, the people who are members of the unions are going to be losing value in other assets that they have. And if they're homeowners in town and they've got kids in school systems and things of that nature, they're it may be in their interest to evaluate what their bargaining position is versus their overall picture.
And I think the one thing we forget is that over this year and the 5 ensuing years, the employees are giving back over $5 million. So that's 600 people giving back $5 million.
I understand that, but
So they're willing to invest back into this community. So the question is, who else is willing to invest back into the community?
but the medical costs are still going up at 5 to 7% a year, and the pension costs are going up 10% a year.
And the pension costs are mostly for the retired pensioners already, or the people just about to. One of the things we forget is with the pension reforms, the 11 percenters, we're going to keep on going up and then hit around 2019, 2020, start going back down. So, it's, they've already taken large hits. It used to be 5% of the income went towards it. Then it was 7. Now it's, I'm an 11 percenter. So it's, again, there's been things that have been done on the employee side to make up for it as well.
But that's where I see the major issue is
And
where
that's what, and I understand.
you can't go
agree.
beyond.
I'm not saying that, but I also see the major issue is about 10 years of ignoring the infrastructure of this town. So if you want to take and this is probably conservative estimate of $20 million worth of capital repairs we probably need to do in post haste. There's just not enough override money out there to fix all that. So we've dealt with poor decision making, and we're dealing with costs that are really out of our control to a certain degree. But I don't say they're out of our controls because obviously we negotiated $5 million out of that. So if you want to add $5 million back to the 13.6, I mean, the point is, if we don't help ourselves, somebody else will help us. And yes, maybe we'll get a little relief on contracts because they have the right at that point, if they are in control, to renegotiate or not negotiate the contracts. But we're all in this together. So let's give and take and try to fix it. And the other thing they've given back is they've given back employees. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in some cases, because we need police officers on the streets. I don't know. This is a discussion for when we get the numbers. Yes, Mrs. Catulli.
I just wanted to ask a rhetorical question, really. I mean, when it comes to the Department of Revenue, I mean, say they do for some reason come in and take over a town, whatever the story is. I mean, do they have a minimum level or a minimum standard of government that they maintain of when it comes to school and government? Do they even look at that, or is it you just have to fit within your revenue and whatever goes?
No.
It's the easiest way to describe it is each legislation that's needed is written specifically for each community. So there's no blanket that covers everything. So
One of the things they did in Lawrence is Lawrence had a $24 million problem, I believe it was. So they had $24 million worth of bonds, I believe it is. They lent them $24 million. And I don't know that they're going to, again, when you're dealing with larger cities, if you take the number that they had versus their budget, we're not that far off in percentages. But if you take the poor management out of the equation for us, you're still left with a deficit, and that deficit has to be addressed. And again, they'll tailor it to fit our needs, and that may mean bonds, or that may mean whatever you can't really say until they do it. But you lose control of the ability to make those decisions yourself. Those decisions are made for you, and I'm not comfortable with that at all. I don't want anybody making decisions on things like that. I would like for us to have input, and we don't have any input at that point. So that's a discussion that I think it was worthwhile, because I did get my answer, which is, there's no set reason, there's no set plan for stepping in, but there are signs along the way, not being able to set your tax rate, other issues, and when you start seeing those things happen or get close to happening, then you can, Also, he did say that under Governor Deval Patrick, they they didn't want to step in. That was one of the things they tried to avoid.
Yeah.
But we have a new governor coming in, right?
I'd slow down on that.
Yeah. So I don't know the answer. The answer is it could happen, but we still have our destiny in our own hands, and we can make the decision on how we want to approach it.
We also have some good people in place.
Yeah.
In the management of the town. I mean,
comfortable with that.
this is, it's not that there's incompetence out there. It's just that
Also,
we don't have the resources.
Right now, we're aware more of what's going on, and I think we can.
We talk about it openly.
That's right, we can take steps to avoid. We know it can happen, so we're taking steps
Right.
to avoid this.
And when you have a superintendent and you have the town administrator sitting in the same room sharing ideas and talking about how, what they're looking at together, that made me a lot more comfortable with it. And now we just need to go with the flow and see where we end up. But, when you see messages or whatever it is, people out there saying, I won't vote for an override for any reason whatsoever, that's fine. People are entitled to their opinion.
We're bringing out to the open, I believe, enough to where, people are more aware of it now than they ever have been. That's the way I
Yeah, but-
look at it.
Finance Committee has worked very hard on this as a group, and we've discussed it, and we've put it out in the open. We've got it in front of the selectmen. The town administrator's been very instrumental in getting us information to do that, so,
All I can tell you, since I've been around, it's being talked out on the streets in the open forum now. You're hearing people, lay people, regular common people in the town talking about the problems here in the town. I've never heard that before, not as openly as I have right now. So I believe people are more aware.
Positively or negatively, or just
Not negatively,
reasonably?
just more aware, honey. Just more aware of, we got some serious problems and we're trying to address them, and I think people are finally realizing what our problems are. I don't think it's been that open to where people have really seen what kind of shape we're in.
Well, there's those misconceptions out there, the misconceptions that there's hidden pots of money somewhere that are just going to pop up. And the perception that the Department of Revenue will come in and take over the town and fix everything. Those are both fantasies. Neither one of those are going to happen unless there's pots of money that I don't know about.
The media is more balanced and
Well, we've always
honest
seemed to
than
pull that
it was in the
rabbit out of
past.
our hat. We've always found something to do. The rabbit's gone, and people realize that.
We did it, Don, but we always told them it was and people didn't believe it. They said, "Oh,
Right,
you're always crying poor."
Thank
But didn't you do that 5-year projection with Dan Cheever
I
and Dick
did,
Paulson
and
in
you
the
know
very
what happened
beginning?
about it?
And you told people then.
I know, but nothing happened.
Nothing happened. So
people just saying, you cried wolf, you cried wolf, you cried wolf.
We didn't cry wolf.
Where's the wolf?
Yeah.
Never showed up.
The wolf's here.
Well,
Wolf's here, that's it.
People are realizing that, I think.
I got the bite marks to show you.
There you go, buddy, I believe you, I believe you.
Any liaison reports? I think we should just do away with that part of our agenda, liaison reports, because we really,
At this time of year, I do.
Yeah.
In the other times of year, Larry, I believe it's important, but right now, I don't believe it's important.
Especially where we've already just had the department heads in for the general
Right.
budget. So later on, it is important.
my
but-
personal opinion is other than the committees that we have to have a representative on,
Well, if the town administrator wanted us to facilitate, I don't know, with budget matters, explanation for things like the police or the library when the final decisions come in, it would be helpful if we get to, if we have someone one-on-one to speak with those people so we understand what we're explaining. But that may come afterwards. I mean, at this
we
point.
can revisit this on, before
Yeah.
July 1st, but just a little bit before July 1st. Approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion on, we want to do them individually, January 23rd first?
23rd, we can do easy.
We can.
I move approval of the minutes for January 23rd, 2014.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That one's done.
I have not read 29.
How about January 29th? Is that the one that we had some issues with last time? Is that the one we had
No.
issues with last time?
No.
Okay. I didn't bring my copy. I see Mr. McDonald, so it's
It's
already
it's 6
incorrect.
pages. I would like to defer it. I mean,
Okay, if
not
you want to
that-
defer, that's fine.
If they're of any, I don't know what we do with these things anyway, frankly.
Once we approve them, they get filed. We don't approve them, they're not filed
Yeah.
yet. That's
Do you want to read it first?
I haven't read it, so I'm not going to vote on it. If
All right,
everybody
so
wants
let's
to.
just defer this one because
It's 6 pages.
it's a huge one.
We already
Well-
passed it, guys. Now you gotta get a vote to take it away.
No, that's fine. If we have enough members that,
You're right, it's 10.
The 23rd was the joint
I said
session.
both of them.
That was all on
yeah,
paper.
we're
I
going to
just
defer
printed
that
that
one
out.
till next time. Is that okay, Kelly? All right. Next meeting, do we need to have a meeting next week? That's the question I keep asking myself.
I'm gonna say yes.
You say yes? I'm open to discussion because we're gonna have to start going through this warrant. There's not as much on there as, surprisingly, we can vote on the where are they at? CPC articles, we can vote on the election of officers, the recurring business, we can vote on that next week if you'd like and get it out of the way. Won't be a long meeting unless something changes in the 2015 budget. Not that I'm looking at you or anything.
I lost my
All right.
calendar.
Is everybody?
If something changes in the 2015 budget, unless it's negative, I think it's just going to be a balanced budget
All right,
at this
and then
point.
we're gonna try to meet again to go with, so we just can update it as time goes on. So, do you wanna meet next week? We'll go through it briefly.
Yep.
Yes.
I think there were a lot of questions that we had and we brought up when we first got the warrant, as we just read through it tonight. And I think that if we could do some independent research or ask email questions, we can't email answers, but we can email questions to each other.
Well, if you can't answer them, what's the point?
Then we could bring them to the meeting. So they mostly came up tonight, but I don't want to just sit here and wait for answers to come to us.
Well, let's just schedule for next week, which is the
6th.
26th, and then we'll just play it by ear. It should be a long meeting anyway, until we have a little more information. And again, I want to reiterate, just to make sure we're on the same page, I just prefer to have, I'm not looking for a joint Board of Selectmen FinCom meeting to go over the articles. Everybody okay with that? Anybody disagree with that?
I don't like that.
Okay. All right, so let's just meet next week, 6:30, same time, same bat channel, and all that stuff.
Yeah, would it be possible to have Alan in here to go over the charter changes?
Alan, we'll schedule Alan.
Because he's going to be gone in March sometime, maybe? Is
Yeah,
that what I
we'll
heard?
schedule Alan in there for the charter change. I wouldn't,
You know what?
is there anybody else you want to have next week
I
that
would
we can
like to get,
tackle?
I'm sorry, but I think some of the controversy things on the planning board, I'd like to get George in here on a couple of those things.
Yeah, but that's something we probably,
Wanna
let
wait
them, they're having a public hearing this week?
Yeah.
Thursday,
Oh.
tomorrow night.
tomorrow night, see? Maybe we can get them next Wednesday. I mean, it's up to you guys. I just think that a couple of those articles with the planning board are gonna be pretty controversial. Just my opinion.
Okay, let's try to get George Barrett in here too. Yes.
I would like to see the school, and
We will have the school in here.
But let's wait till they get to have their next
Yeah,
meeting.
their next meeting's not till the first week of March, so,
Yeah.
and what I was hoping to do is if we get farther enough along, that, we could attend their next meeting, because
Be
they're going
glad
to be
to.
voting on some of the things we talked about in our meeting and over there, and I think it's important for us to hear it. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have a meeting next week, we'll try to wrap up some stuff and get it out there so that we have a little time to go to their meeting. Does that work for everybody?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
I haven't made one yet. I'll entertain one right this minute, though.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
I.
All those opposed? All those abstain?
I don't think that motion was seconded.
Game over.
You made it, you really
Yeah, that was
seconded it.
what I
Okay,
said,
that's
yeah.
what you said. You
Close
said
to
you
a
seconded
second.
it, okay.
Derek, go home.